Okay. I'm Bill Gibbons. I'm Commissioner of the Tennessee Department of Safety and Homeland Security. We apologize for running a little late, but we had a little bit of a fog problem as we were flying in from Nashville. I have with me this morning Colonel Tracy Trott, who heads up the Highway Patrol, Kendall Poole, the Director of the Governor's Highway Safety Office. I think as most of you know, effective January 1st, we will be seeing an increase in our seatbelt fines in Tennessee. The first offense will go up from $10 to $25, and second and subsequent offenses will go up from $20 to $50. Again, that is effective January 1st of this year. We believe that seatbelt enforcement must be a priority in our state. So far this year, we have lost over 300 lives on our roadways because people chose not to wear seatbelts. That's 300 too many. During the holiday season in particular, but also throughout the entire year, it's important to continue for motorists to make safe choices when traveling on our roadways. Now, I think as you probably know, we have really focused during this administration on data-driven deployment of our state troopers to try to make sure they're in the right places at the right times to have the maximum impact on our traffic fatality rate through effective DUI enforcement, seatbelt enforcement, and so on. We have seen a 255% increase since 2010 in seatbelt citations. So if you look at where we are this year through really last week and compare it to 2010, that's a 255% increase in seatbelt citations by our state troopers. So far this year, state troopers have issued over 107,000 seatbelt citations. That points out the importance to us in enforcing our seatbelt laws in order to reduce the traffic fatality rate. Now, I hope the day will come when it is difficult for a trooper to find a motorist not wearing a seatbelt. That's frankly our goal, to reach that point, but we're not there yet. And seatbelt enforcement is going to continue to be one of our priorities. What we hope is that the increase in the seatbelt fine gives us another tool in the toolbox to really encourage the right behavior by more motorists in our state, namely wearing that seatbelt. So it's a combination of a commitment to continued strong enforcement of our seatbelt laws coupled with the increase in the seatbelt fines. And together, we think that can serve as a deterrent to those who may be inclined to make that bad choice of not wearing the seatbelt. The bottom line is this: we want our citizens to obey the law and wear their seatbelts. Under this administration, as I mentioned, we've had a priority of reducing our traffic fatalities, and we're moving in the right direction. We're very encouraged by the trend we see in the number of traffic fatalities going down. But we're still way too high. We're still above the national average. And we're going to continue to make this our top priority in the Highway Patrol. I'm very proud of the efforts of our state troopers across the state. Under the direction of Colonel Trott, we have saved lives on Tennessee's roadways. Our troopers are committed to making sure our citizens arrive at their destinations safely. I want to encourage all of our citizens during this holiday season in particular to drive safely, wear their seatbelts, and have a wonderful holiday season. And now it's my pleasure to introduce the Colonel of the Highway Patrol, Tracy Trott.
Thank you, Commissioner. It certainly makes my job much easier to have the support of Commissioner Gibbons and Commissioner Shore from the Department of Transportation in our efforts to save lives. When our administration began, the Commissioner and I wanted to become a very proactive organization. We wanted to do something about people dying on our highways before those crashes happened, and we felt like seatbelt enforcement was a good place to start. We upped our seatbelt enforcement considerably over the last 4 or 5 years, and that has saved lives. We've gone from a state that had an unrestrained fatality rate of 54% down to a state that has an unrestrained fatality rate of 48% in these 4 years. So many people are walking around in Tennessee alive today because of the work of the Highway Patrol and other law enforcement agencies in enforcing the seatbelt law. Education is a vital component along with the enforcement, and that's what we're here today to do, to educate the public that the fine is increasing and that they do need to obey the law. We are looking for voluntary compliance. As the Commissioner said, we would like to have a day that we don't have to concentrate on seatbelt enforcement, that it is so ingrained in our driving public that we don't have to worry about it. That's when we will see the greatest benefits. But right now we have a lot of people not wearing their seatbelts, and it's causing great injury and harm to themselves and fatalities on our roadways. So we need to do everything within our power to make sure that people comply with the law. And a part of that compliance may be raising the fine like we asked the legislature to do last year, and they passed that law overwhelmingly. Hopefully the fine increase will encourage them to wear their seatbelt, gain more voluntary compliance, up our usage rate in Tennessee, and that will in turn drive our fatality rate down. We didn't do this haphazardly. We studied other states that have had small increases in their fines, and we saw the results that that produced. And what it did, it increased their voluntary compliance, and it drove down their fatality rate in all 4 states that had similar fine increases to what we asked to be enacted. So we're encouraged by that. We hope that press conferences like this get the word out to the public and make it more of an ingrained behavior, that they wear their seatbelts and restraints. We hope that we don't have to write 107,000 tickets next year. We hope that our compliance rate goes up into the mid-90s and more lives will be saved in Tennessee, and we'll move on to some other problem in traffic safety and try to save more lives there. But for right now, this is an overriding problem with our driving public, and we need to do as much as we can to get people to voluntarily comply with the law and buckle up. And with that, I'll turn it over to the Director of the Governor's Highway Safety Office, a great advocate for traffic safety, and a great supporter of the Tennessee Highway Patrol, Director Kendall Poole.
Good morning. Thank you for being here. It's not easy to tell your story if you guys don't show up and help us do that. And I can tell you that the gentlemen behind me are committed to saving lives on our roadways, and that's our mission in the Governor's Highway Safety Office, is to reduce crashes and save lives all across the state of Tennessee. Over the course of the last decade, we have been able together to reduce fatalities to the tune of 30%. So almost a third of Tennesseans are living in the last decade that wouldn't be if you look at our fatality numbers, and we're on pace for another record year, but we're always continuing to look for another avenue, another way for us to be able to save lives in the state. And we're here to talk about the seatbelt fine increase today. As you know, wearing your seatbelt is your best defense in the event of a crash, whether that crash is your fault or not. And one thing that I want to point out is that we're required by the federal government in the Governor's Highway Safety Office to do an observational seatbelt survey every year. And it gives us a lot of data to base our decisions and our actions on, how we educate the public and how we enforce. Last year, in 2014, 87.7% of Tennesseans were found to be wearing their seatbelts, and that's terrific. It's an all-time high in the state of Tennessee. However, it's still, again, lower than the national average. We had a little further to go since we passed the primary seatbelt law in 2004. This year, we actually took a step backwards. 86.2 is our observed rate across the state. You might say, well, that's only 1.5 percentage points. That's not too bad. That represents tens of thousands of Tennesseans who are making the choice not to wear their seatbelt. And we've already talked about the unbelted fatality rate. If you look at that, and you look at all of our fatalities on the roadways this year and last year, virtually half of our fatalities come from that 14% of our population that chooses not to wear a seatbelt. So we have to continue to educate, and we have to continue to enforce our laws to make sure that we save more lives. And I want to point out, whether you think it's your choice and I don't have to wear my seatbelt and I don't need to do this, there is a cost other than that of possibly your life. There's an economic cost that comes along with it. You think about lost time, you think about congestion, you think about insurance costs, you think about court fees, you add all of those things together, and it's a cost to society. And that's the choice that you're making, is to impact others around you, even if you want to throw out the emotional aspect of everything. So again, in 2012, if you look back 3 years ago, it cost the United States of America $10 billion, $10 billion in lost finances, lost fees, lost time. And if you break that down to every man, woman, and child across the United States, that's $32 per person, if you want to think about it that way. It's pretty astounding, not only the emotional toll, but also the financial toll. One of the things that we've observed over the years is a continued lack of usage by males in pickup trucks. Pickup trucks actually have an 8 percentage point less usage rate than a normal vehicle. So again, we want to continue to try to reach our target demographic, both with education and with enforcement. You know, if you have a loved one who drives a pickup truck, make sure that they're wearing their seatbelt. Another thing that concerned us this year was seatbelt usage in vans. And obviously vans sometimes mean children, and car seats are very, very important to us. And we through the Governor's Highway Safety Office, are able to have 90 fitting stations across the state of Tennessee that will train technicians, instructors to make sure that our children remain safe if they're in a van or if they're in any other car. And urban versus rural usage, urban drivers are more likely to wear their seatbelt. 88.4% of Tennesseans in urban areas wear their seatbelt. In rural areas, about 4 percentage points less. So again, rural areas, if you're driving roads you've been driving your entire life and you're comfortable, that's still not a good recipe there. We need to make sure that anything can happen at any time. Buckling up means every trip and every time. And we know that seatbelts save lives. And we're in the Governor's Highway Safety Office, we're about changing behavior. And that's easier said than done many times. And we certainly hope that a seatbelt fine increase will encourage people to do that. That's the reason we're getting out and talking about that. And I want to point out, too, that this is not about padding the county or city coffers. It's not about writing more citations. It's about saving lives. And we'll continue to talk about that. We'll continue to make sure that every Tennessean gets that message. Let's save some lives.
Okay, we'll be glad to take any questions that you have. And Megan, do you have copies of the press release? Okay, so Megan will make sure you get copies of press release if you don't already have those. I will point out one thing just to kind of add to what Kendall said. In terms of this seatbelt fine increase, none of that money is coming to the Department of Safety and Homeland Security or to the Highway Patrol as part of the department. All of that seatbelt fine money goes into the state's general fund. So we're not benefiting in terms of our budget in any way as a result of this fine increase. But we'll be glad to take any questions that you have.
Is $25 enough to really change behaviors, or do we need to go higher? Is there a possibility of going higher?
You know, I think it will change behavior, especially if we have your help from the media to get the word out. Now, I'm going to ask Colonel Trott to kind of respond to that as well, because he's taken a look at some other states that have had comparable increases in their seatbelt fines and the results of that. So, Colonel?
Well, obviously, higher fines might make more of a difference, but we had to have a level of fine that we felt comfortable with, that we felt like we could pass in the legislature. And we surveyed the southeastern states around us, and this puts us very comparable with all those states. There are fines that are much higher out in the northeast and the northwest part of the country, and consequently their usage rate is much higher than ours. So I do think fines correlate with usage rate, but this is a fine that's very comparable to the southeast. We're very comfortable with it. We think that it will make a difference, and we're very optimistic that we're going to see a bump in our usage rate and be able to drive down fatalities with this fine level.
Is this just adults, or will this also increase for not buckling up kids?
The fine for seatbelt violation is 25 and 50 starting January 1st. Now, the fines for a violation of child restraint law are different. They are not affected by this law.
Other questions? Okay, Megan will have the press releases for you, and if you have any other questions for any of the three of us, we'll be around for a few minutes if you want to do any individual interviews. Did I leave anything out, Megan?
You're good.
Okay.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Thank you.